An elderly man was exercising beside the Jinjiang River when he noticed a woven sack drifting toward the bank. It looked ordinary, but when he reached down to lift it, the weight stopped him. He pulled harder, opened the sack, and froze. What he discovered was enough to bring police racing to the river. As officers searched the surrounding water, they realized the sack was only the beginning. Somewhere nearby, a young woman had vanished. Nobody knew her name, nobody knew what had happened to her, and whoever had placed the evidence in the river had left almost nothing behind. Welcome to Paws&Clues with Ajax. I'm Ajax. Every case leaves a trace, and today we're following one of them. It's the spring of 1987 in Maiyang County, a quiet rural township in Hunan Province, south-central China. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where strangers get noticed, and where nothing much ever happens. The Jinjiang River runs through the area, and on the morning of April 27th, an elderly man is out for his morning walk along the riverbank near a river island called Malanzhou. He notices something in the water, a woven grain sack, large and heavy, drifting toward the bank. He pulls it open, and inside, he finds a human leg. Police are called. Officers search the river, and by the end of that day, they've recovered 6 packages from the water. Together, they contain the complete remains of a young woman, between 18 and 20 years old. The cuts are precise and clean, no splintered bone. Whoever did this knew how to use a blade. But beyond that, investigators have almost nothing. No witnesses, no name, no identity. The river has taken care of everything else. And at the same time this investigation opens, there's an order that comes down from above. Solve this case within 1 month. This is 1987, and China's Strike Hard campaign against crime is in full force. Police across the country are under intense pressure to deliver results, deadlines, targets, careers on the line. That pressure is about to shape everything that follows. With no identity for the victim, investigators do the logical thing and look for missing women. In a tight-knit community like Maiyang County, a young woman going missing would be noticed. 2 names come up. The first, a woman named Zhan Jinlian, is ruled out quickly. Her family type doesn't match the tissue samples from the remains. The second name is more interesting, Yang Liu Mei. A young woman had been working as a waitress at a local place called the Guangchang Hotel. About a month before the remains were found, she simply stopped showing up to work with no goodbye, no explanation. The hotel manager, a man named Liu, said workers came and went without warning in that era. But once word got around about what had been found in the river, he came forward. Police travelled to Guizhou province and traced the woman to a county called Songtao, where they learned that Yang Liu Mei was actually named Shi Xiaorong, 18 years old, one of 8 siblings. Her older sister had worked at the Guangchang Hotel the year before and had arranged for Shi Xiaorong to take her place. This was 1987. DNA forensic testing didn't exist in China yet, so blood type was the only biological tool investigators had. When they tested the family's blood type, it came back as a match for the victim. And with that single data point, one blood type that covers roughly 1/3 of the population, they had their answer. The victim was Shi Xiaorong. Now they just needed to find whoever was responsible. The investigative theory was that this was a crime of passion, given the personal nature of how the remains had been separated. Investigators pulled out a forensic textbook. One officer literally looked it up, and the manual said this kind of precise, practiced cutting pointed to someone with professional blade experience. In a county this size, there were only 2 surgeons, both quickly cleared. That left butchers. And in Malan village, right near the stretch of river where those packages were found, there was one name that kept coming up. A man with a complicated personal life and a known connection to the Guangchang Hotel. That name was Teng Xingshan. He was 39 years old, a former soldier who had come home and taken up work as a butcher. He had a reputation for a short temper and a history of drinking. His marriage had fallen apart 5 years earlier, and he'd been living alone since. When officers arrived to question him, they noted he seemed nervous and gave evasive answers. That was enough. He was taken into custody under a provision called custody for investigation. Not a formal arrest, but a detention that could legally last up to 3 months. What followed is documented in Teng's own statements, repeated consistently for the rest of his life. Interrogators worked in rotating shifts, sessions ran long, sleep was disrupted, conditions Teng described as coercion and torture. At one point, an interrogator tried a softer approach, asked casually whether anyone had been seen coming to Teng's home at night. Teng went quiet. Then the interrogator put a photograph on the table, Shi Xiaorong, and asked if Teng recognized her. Teng said she looked familiar, maybe. The interrogator demanded a full confession. What Teng later explained was this. The woman seen at his home was his ex-wife, Jian Jinhua. Despite the divorce, pushed on him by his own mother, the two had stayed close, and when he hesitated at that photograph, he was trying to protect Jian Jinhua, not hide a crime. But the interrogators had their theory, and eventually a signed confession was produced. It stated that Teng had been involved with Shi Xiaorong, that she had stolen money from him, that he had chased her to the riverbank, suffocated her, and then used his butchering tools to dispose of her in the river. During a follow-up visit, he pointed out a knife at his own home and an axe at his brother's house. As officers led him away, he shouted to his family that he had not done this. 8 months after those packages were found, the case was officially declared solved. On October 26, 1988, Teng Xingshan was formally charged with intentional homicide. Before the trial, both a prosecutor and a judge visited him in detention and told him to cooperate fully, that without it, there was only one outcome waiting for him. His defense lawyer was appointed by the state, and when Teng found out, he said quietly that everyone in the room was already on the same side. At trial, the prosecution presented 3 pillars: the blood type match, a forensic skull reconstruction that a specialist described as roughly similar to photographs of Shi Xiaorong, though the report had noted discrepancies, and the final version had been quietly revised to read consistent, with no new evidence to support that, and the claim that marks on the victim's skull matched the axe from Teng's brother's home. Teng rejected all of it. He said his statements had been forced from him. He said he had never met Shi Xiaorong. He said he was innocent. His defense lawyer didn't argue for acquittal, only that if the act occurred, it was a crime of passion, and that Teng's military service should count as a mitigating factor. The court found him guilty. The circumstances were especially vicious, the ruling said. The sentence was death. Teng appealed immediately. His family found help from a relative who had practiced law for over 2 decades, who had initially refused because a convicted family member was a disgrace. But Teng's ex-wife, Jian Jinhua, came to his door and wouldn't leave. She knelt on the floor and wept until he agreed to look at the file. He found 4 serious problems. The blood type match wasn't evidence of identity. The skull reconstruction had documented discrepancies later quietly removed from the conclusion. The confession said Teng suffocated the victim, but the forensic report said she died from a blow to the skull, not the same cause of death. And water station records showed the Malanzhou sandbar was underwater when the crime allegedly occurred, making the chase in the confession physically impossible. He submitted a detailed appeal. If this verdict stands, an innocent man will be executed. On January 19, 1989, the appeal court upheld the original verdict. 9 days later, on January 28, 1989, Teng Xingshan was taken to an execution ground and shot. He was 40 years old, and he had said he was innocent every single time anyone asked. His family buried him alone on a hillside, away from the ancestral plot. Being executed for a crime like this carried a shame the community didn't forgive. His parents didn't live long after that. His ex-wife, Jian Jinhua, was left to raise their 2 children alone. A daughter, Teng Dian, who had been 10 when her father was arrested, and a son, Teng Xiaohui, who had been 8. They grew up as the children of an executed man, carrying that label through school, through work, through everything, including the day a factory manager fired Teng Dian, not for anything she'd done, but because he found out who her father was. And then, in 1993, 4 years after Teng Xingshan was shot, a letter arrived at a home in Guizhou province. The return address was from a village in Shandong province, a place the family had no connection to. The mother opened it. Inside were 11 handwritten characters, uneven, like they'd been written quickly or under pressure. The message said, "Mom, I can't explain. I want to come home." And at the bottom, it was signed with the name of a woman who, by all official records, had been dead for 6 years. It was signed, Shi Xiaorong. Her brother-in-law, Jiang Changlu, made the journey to Shandong province. When he arrived at the village, Yutai County, she was there. Shi Xiaorong was alive. She had been alive the entire time. She told Jiang Changlu what had happened. In 1987, before she disappeared from the Guangchang Hotel, someone approached her with the promise of better work and better pay. She was lured away and trafficked to Shandong province, sold to a family, and forced to live there as a wife. She was kept inside, watched, and the community around her protected the arrangement. For 5 years she had been looking for any way to get a message out, and that letter was the first one she'd managed to send. When Jiang Changlu tried to take her home that day, the family refused. The village closed ranks. It took multiple return visits, escalating confrontations, and eventually police involvement before they finally let her go. She returned to Guizhou to find that the state had officially declared her dead, and it would take years just to restore her legal existence as a living person. News of Shi Xiaorong's return filtered back to people who had known Teng Xingshan. The hotel manager Liu went to Teng's older brother, who said the man was already dead. What was the point? Jian Jinhua said only that she wanted to leave the past behind. The news sat there for years without becoming action, until the spring of 2004, when Teng Dian and Teng Xiaohui came home for the Spring Festival, and their mother finally told them the truth. That Shi Xiaorong hadn't died, that their father had been convicted of something that, at the very least, was not what the court said it was. The two of them left the table before the meal was over and went to the Huaihua Legal Aid Center to file a complaint with the Hunan Provincial People's Procuratorate. It took about a year. DNA technology made the verification straightforward. The Hunan High People's Court reviewed the case, and in late 2005, with formal recognition following in early 2006, issued its revised ruling. Teng Xingshan was declared not guilty. The compensation paid to his children, the Chinese language record puts the figure at 666,660 yuan, roughly $92,000 at the time. When Jian Jinhua heard the verdict, she said, "My husband has already been shot. What does not guilty mean now?" She called him her husband, not her ex-husband. The officials directly responsible for the original investigation received internal party disciplinary warnings. Nothing more. Here is the part of this story that was never resolved. If the remains found in the river that morning were not Shi Xiaorong's, and they weren't, then whose were they? A young woman was put in that river. She was given a wrong name, used as evidence against a man who had nothing to do with her death, and then forgotten. In the unidentified persons database, she is listed as the Malanzhou Jane Doe. Nobody knows who she was. Nobody has ever been held responsible. The person who put her in that river has never been found. Teng Xingshan, the man who died insisting he was innocent, whose ex-wife knelt on a floor until someone agreed to fight for him, whose children came home one spring festival and refused to let it go, was exonerated 16 years too late to mean anything to him. That part of the case is still open. Thanks for watching Paws and Clues with Ajax. Until next time, keep following the clues. I'll see you in the next one.